I philosophically believe in a housing first model, but just giving somebody a house doesn't solve the reason why they were homeless to begin with.
On the West Coast, you see some of these headlines with homelessness. $1.5 billion in this current budget.
There are ways that we can solve homelessness in our community that you probably aren't going to find if you Google. You're probably not going to find if you use ChatGPT, which is...
One of the big things happening in major cities across the country, and I think as we grow will be more of a problem here, is homelessness.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you know, a regressive tax policy like a property tax referendum moving forward, right? They're going to have to make that money up somehow. You're probably going to have increases of sales taxes, et cetera, which is a more regressive system, which puts pressure on some of the lower income people, et cetera. And obviously, as we grow and develop, you know, the bigger city we are, you know, that's going to correlate to more people living on the streets and stuff like that. On the West Coast, you see some of these headlines with homelessness and some of the money that flows into those resources. David, I don't want to butcher this. Could you just look up like California funding for homelessness? I want to say you might know, and you might even track this stuff, because I would imagine you find it interesting to look at different areas around the country of these different organizations, how they operate, what they're doing right, lessons learned, et cetera. I think it's like 30 billion. What is it? No, 1.5 billion in this current budget for the homelessness, housing, and assistance prevention program in California. And this is the new one. And you know, that's in 1 year. California spent over $20 billion by 2024 on homelessness programs from 2019 to 2024. So in those 5 years, the point is it's a ton of money. Thankfully, we don't have that problem here. But again, I anticipate as we grow, you're going to need more resources put to those things. Why do you think it's that much money in a place like California? Is the problem that big? Is the system that they have to address that problem broken?
I philosophically believe in a housing first model, but just giving somebody a house doesn't solve the reason why they were homeless to begin with. There are addiction issues sometimes. Many times there's a trauma history. And that trauma untreated, as we started this conversation, doesn't just magically go away when you hand somebody the keys to an apartment. We have to take care of the whole person, understanding that basic needs have to come first. Food, clothing, shelter have to come first. But that can't be it. We have to provide those behavioral health overlays. We have to provide the employment assistance, all of those things to get somebody from homeless to sustainable. And I think there's a difference between being situationally homeless and generationally homeless. Many of us are one paycheck or two away from being situationally homeless. Those individuals, we have a better opportunity, and it may be quote unquote easier for us to be able to serve them because they were stable, except for something that happened that made them unstable.
Right.
For individuals who may have had what's known as generational poverty or generational homelessness, this may be all that they've known. So helping to move them out of that space is very different. So that's the best way that I can kind of articulate that.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
I am hopeful that if we find ourselves in that situation, we're going to be more in the situational homelessness space. And then that's where the opportunities lie, because we can be creative if given the opportunity, Garrett. If you give the people that actually know what the heck that they're doing, you give them the resources, take your hands off the frickin' money and let them do what they need to do, they can solve it. Maggie Rogers with Catholic Charities can solve homelessness in our community. She knows how to do it.
Wow.
We just have to give her the resources and then let go of those dollars. The people that are doing this work are experts.
That's a bold statement about her. I need to have her on the show to talk
Maggie
about that.
I bow down to Maggie
Wow.
Rogers with Catholic Charities. She is absolutely amazing. But we know what to do. It is oftentimes the funding sources that make our work so very difficult. And you and I could have a whole absolute podcast around if we would treat our nonprofits the way we treat our for-profit businesses. All of us would be so much more efficient and better able to use the dollars that we have better. Nobody tells Spectrum how they have to utilize the dollars that I pay them every month for my Spectrum bill. I don't tell them they can only use my money to buy pink, Bic pens. But that's the way our nonprofits are treated. We are dictated to, we are told what populations to serve and how to serve them and what they need to look like. And if we were just given the opportunity to do what we do best, I have multiple master's degrees. I have done this work for over 30 years. I know how to do the work. If I was given the trust to give me the resources and let me do the work, whatever that outcome looks like, I will get you to that outcome, but let me do it the way I know that works for this population. I promise things would look better. So
very well said. Thank you.
sorry.
No,
So sorry to
no,
go
no,
off
no.
on my soapbox.
No, I'm
that
sorry
is-
to bring up the West Coast and their $20 billion budget.
And I would speculate that part of the reason why this isn't working is because somebody that doesn't have an expertise in this area is telling the folks who do how to use the dollars. And it's not efficient and it's not effective. Give the people who know what the hell they're doing their money. And I promise you we could solve these issues. And I think in Hillsborough County specifically, we have got such a great group of leaders that get this and try to make the opportunities as flexible as possible. And I think that's why we have seen so much success.
Love that. I would imagine you have gotten a lot of calls in the last few years, especially recently, due to inflation, though.
Oh, gosh, yes. Absolutely.
I'm afraid I can't make my rent next
Correct.
month. My landlord's going to, the
Correct.
whole thing.
Absolutely.
And coaching that is difficult because the answer at the end of the day, just to be blunt, is, well, you need to make more money to afford your life, right? Of course. However, what are things you're saying that can coach people into a solution or outcome oriented thought process where it's like, okay, you know what, that's true, and I need to figure out a way to make that rent? Like, what are you saying to people that are calling you with financial issues in their life?
Well, first of all, we let them talk because it's the financial pressure that somebody is under. By the time they're calling us, it has taken over their lives. They might not be sleeping. They might not be eating right. They might be utilizing that alcohol bottle a little bit too much. We need to give them the space to be able to just kind of vent all of that. It's so important to start the conversation there. I can't problem solve if you can't hear me because you're still all up in your head. So I'm going to give you space. First of all, I'm going to validate how you're feeling. I am going to support where you are right now, and I'm going to give you the space to just dump. And then I'm going to listen to what you're saying. So very similar to what we were talking about before. We're going to try to talk about, okay, you're absolutely right. There may not be rent assistance, but let's problem solve around this. Have you thought about how you could lower your food bill to help to pay your rent? Do you know about Feeding Tampa Bay? Do you know about that pantry that's right there in your community, or that pantry that's attached to your child's school where you could get some relief from your grocery bill that could now go towards your TICO bill or towards your rent? You can't even think like that when you're so up in your head and you're so worried about how am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? You've got to vent all of that first, and then we start problem solving together. Our staff are brilliant at doing that, of looking at opportunities and different ways to be able to essentially take advantage of something over here that frees up a resource that you can utilize over there. We work very closely with TICO. We have access to TICO assistance, so we can help folks in that space. We have been very fortunate to have a wonderful relationship with Airbnb.org, which is the foundation aspect of Airbnb. So we recently had somebody who lost their home in a fire. They called us. We were able to work with Airbnb to provide them with housing through Airbnb for a few weeks while they get insurance settlements and all of that kind of stuff done. That way they didn't have to pay for a hotel. So there are ways that we can utilize resources that do exist in the community that you probably aren't going to find if you Google. You're probably not going to find if you use ChatGPT, but our staff are specially trained to be able to help quilt those things together based upon your circumstance.
So I'm gathering that the crisis center doesn't operate in a silo at all. I mean,
not at all.
The tools in your belt are so much, involved in other resources, whether it's government, whether it's the TPD dispatcher sitting next to you, or whether it's all these different organizations, including Airbnb. How new is that Airbnb program? That's really interesting.
Started with the hurricanes
Wow.
in 2024.
Huh.
They came to us, and so we now have an agreement that we can provide that level of
Wow.
support for individuals who have experienced what is essentially a natural disaster or some sort of disaster. That has been a wonderful opportunity for the folks we've been able to help. Now, there's qualifications and all the blah, blah,
Sure.
blah, but for that person who lost their house in a fire,
Oh, yeah.
that's a game changer for
Game
them.
changer.
Absolute
Are
game
you,
changer.
and only because I'm curious, are you aware of the intricacies of how exactly they do that? Like they have,
Mhm.
someone with Airbnb could put their home on that list and then,
Correct.
wow,
And then the foundation will pay
those nightly rates or
those
whatever it may
rates.
be.
Usually the Airbnb owner is willing to take maybe a little bit of a less rate. We particularly saw that during the hurricanes, is that
Mm.
these homeowners, these Airbnb owners, they just wanted to help the
Yeah, of
community.
course.
And they were like, this is a great way for us to do it, but also to be able to maintain our insurance and all of the other things that you have to have as an Airbnb business. And it was a wonderful way to do that. It was connecting people who had capacity with people who needed it.